So I think a good place to start, since we're at Milk and Honey Farms, is to talk about the name. And I don't want to make any jumps as to where this came from, but I thought I would start by reading this, and you could tell me if this resonates with you guys. So, if the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that flows with milk and honey. So I'm assuming that maybe there's some resonance with that verse. Can you tell me about the name and if that is accurate?
We grew up with my mom, reading us Bible stories and things like that. And she'd often talk about, the Israelites leaving Egypt and heading to this land flowing with milk and honey. And my imagination would always run wild what that would look like. And so that was the promised land. And so when we were making this big transition, I thought it was just an appropriate name, that we're heading to the promised land. When we first came, there wasn't milk or honey, or houses, or wells, or anything else. But it's been a great name. And it gave us vision of something to work towards. And now it's a reality.
That's good. It's easy to look now as you guys are a few years into this journey, as it's just my first time here, but as you drive around and just be in awe of what you've done. But I think it's probably important to start somewhere a little bit further back. And so maybe a good place to start is kind of how you ended up here. And we can start just kind of by talking about where you're from and maybe your upbringing and what maybe led you to today.
Yes. Where are you from?
The same place as you. So we were living we're from South Africa. We were living in Houston for 10 years. And I don't know how much detail you want to give with that, but we basically wanting to move out of Houston, and we actually were looking for a weekend property that was just outside of Houston. And he came across this property and had bought it without even consulting me, which is fine. It worked out well, but
this is not a marriage podcast, is it?
Yeah.
It's a marriage program. I'll have a ranch without the wife stamp it for free. Perfect.
Which it was fine with me because it was a weekend place in any way. Our kids at the time, we thought it would be good to have a place where we can take kids and friends and all those kinds of things. And as time went, he kind of got the idea more and more like, I think we need to make a lifestyle change, and I think we need to move there and live there. And when we bought the property, that wasn't our intention. And so we didn't plan to be in Brenham or, where we currently are. It was kind of happenstance, and the Lord leading us. But basically, eventually we moved out here. I think we were still trying, we were back and forth between, I think it was the July and the August, because we wanted the kids to be able to start school in August. And that was really when it became like a permanent move. And it was hard for us. It was hard for the kids, not so much for him. I felt like he was like a kid, like having new things to do and experiences and all of that. It was hard for our kids to start in a new school. Geordie started in 8th grade. And for girls, that's making new friends and stuff is not easy. She would cry every day when I picked her up from school. Why do we have to be in Brenham? Why do we have to live here? Like, why do I have to go to this school? Now she's as happy as anything. Like, she thinks this was a great move. So that's basically what happened. We moved from Houston, and this was just supposed to be a weekend place, and it started off just being a place for us to live and kind of have a more like self-sustaining farm to where we could have animals and those kinds of things. But we would, for the most part, my sister and my brother-in-law also lived here at the time, so they were kind of helping us set up all the fencing that you see and the, animal enclosures and things like that. And that's how it started, right?
Yeah, it's this whole thing, for me anyway. My story's a little different. My wife had the wonderful joy of walking behind while I plowed face through the fields as such with all of this. But there was a few factors that led to this happening. So we've always lived in apartments in the US. That's all the kids knew, sharing a room, all of that stuff. And then my brother and I started a company, and it got bought by a public company. So for the first time in our lives, we had money. Like, we could build our dream house. And so we were just walking down that American dream path, you know? And anyway, so we built our dream house, and it was a nightmare. The contractor stole like $250,000, and we had to end up build it ourselves. What do we know about construction? Nothing. I'm in IT, and my wife, she shops. So so anyway, we had to. It was such a nightmare, but all of this plays into the story that we have here. And I remember lying awake at night, hating this guy. Like, if I could have killed him, I think I would have. Like, that's how much I hated him for what he had done and things like that. And I remember God saying, like, if you don't forgive him, like this is as far as you go. And so I let it go, and I just said, okay, Lord, you help us do this. So we build this dream house, and it's beautiful, and it's huge kitchen and all the things, and then the big freeze happened in Texas, where everything shut down. COVID happened, so we got these big events going on, and when the freeze happened, I realized, like, we are such a useless family. Like, we don't know how to do anything, because I would say 90% of our meals were Uber Eats. Right? We're that family. So Uber Eats, and my wife's like, like on Talladega nights, come on, supper's ready. I've been slaving over this for hours,
It's a little extreme.
Yeah.
Little extreme, but okay.
And then obviously COVID, I was spending a lot of time around my family, like many people. And I really loved it. So that's where the idea for the weekend retreat came from. But to be honest, the conversations that were happening in my house, I did not love. My daughter was so intent of, she has to go to this high school. Like, it's got to be this high school, because then she can get into this university. And I was like, we don't need any of those things. We didn't go to any of those schools, any of those universities. And of course, yeah, if you can, great. But God is so much bigger than that. And it just became about shopping. And, we were just getting into that consumer lifestyle. So the more I started studying homesteading and that, the more I fell in love with the lifestyle. And that's why I was like, we need to transition and live there. And so the more I fell in love with it, the less I fell in love with the city, to the point, like she was saying, where I was like, I was sleeping in my car and happier than sleeping in my beautiful bed. So it took us 2 years to build this dream home. And we lived in it for 1 year. And then I was trying to do Inception with my wife at night. I was like, move to the ranch. You want to move to the ranch? It never worked. And so we actually moved here with a very unhappy family. My wife wasn't on board. My kids were not on board. And about 3 months in, I really thought I had messed up my family, because it's like, I try to do this to make them happier, and everybody's miserable. But things started to turn around. But I don't know how deep you want to go with this, but this is a roller coaster of a story. But when I moved here, I was a multimillionaire, and when you're a multimillionaire for the first time, after never having money, I mean, you just feel invincible. I was just, I could get all the farm equipment. We could just build everything. I was just, as much as my vision would go, I would draw and we would do. And then we hadn't even built the cabin yet. It was just those houses up there. And the public company that had bought us had paid us mostly in shares. And I woke up one morning and I just felt sick. And I checked the stock and it crashed 95%. And so I went to sleep a multimillionaire, and I woke up pretty much broke. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I wandered out of, this is, dark. And I ended up falling down in this, where the cabin is now, on a dirt pad there, lying face down on the ground. I think I had a panic attack for the first time in my life. It felt like the worst nightmare ever. And I wasn't sure if this was real or if I was dreaming. And the more I realized it was real, the more I felt like my heart was just going to give out. And I remember rolling onto my back, and I just said, God, please have mercy on me. Like, it was over. It was over. Because we didn't even have money to pay for the things I had bought and things like that. And anybody that's listening to this who's going through a situation like that, many times God doesn't just drop a bag of money out the sky, but He gives us opportunities. And He gave me the strength, and I started working 3 and 4 jobs outside of the ranch to keep floating it. I was taking multiple tech jobs because I'm a software engineer and CTO, and I started taking all these jobs just to keep the ranch going. And it started to pick up steam, and things started to, it started to work out. And then, what you see here, when we started the ranch, we obviously loved Jesus and that, but I was never going to be like overt about like my faith. Those people that are just like overboard. And the way God rescued this ranch, like I have to give glory to God that this place even exists. So we overcame that stock crash, and it never recovered. Right? So we have literally built this ranch as a very normal person. Someone who's listening to this like, well, I don't have millions. Well, I don't have millions either, And we started to just do the best we can. And how the whole Airbnb side started was because of the war in the Ukraine. So we had a garage with a massive attic upstairs, like way too big. And I even said to the designer, like, why did you design an attic big enough for a house? And it turns out because God had a plan. So I converted that into what's now the hotel, so that my software guys in the Ukraine had a place to come stay. So we built this out in like 2 months. Rushed, built it out, everything like that, with no thought of anything else that would come. And then they weren't able to come after they got to as they were getting ready to leave. They were of perfect fighting age, and they weren't allowed to leave the country. So we're sitting with just this thing. So I was like, okay, let's put it on Airbnb. And what do we know about Airbnb and short-term rentals? Nothing. We're in software. And so we put it on, and ladies start to book this place. And more ladies start to book. And we're like, why are these ladies booking this place? Like, we're in the middle of nowhere, according to us, And they're like, no, there's a round top festival just 15 minutes from here. They're like, this is the perfect location. You're a genius for picking it. I said, well, I was just picking a place between Houston and Austin, hoping my brother would visit us from Austin. So even that, I can't claim anything other than God's grace in the location of this place. So that starts to do well, and then we go all in. When I say we, I mean it's just me and my wife, fighting me all along the way,
anchoring you.
me. If you think about the when someone's training for football season and they're trying to run down the field and they've got all those weights on their back, that's my beautiful wife. Every step I'm trying to take, trying to keep me grounded. But we make a wonderful team. And so then I went all in, and we built all these casitas and everything that are here now, and the domes and all of that. And so that finished out 2023. This place that we're in now is just a shell. And 2024 had to be perfect, like perfect. And so we gambled, right? We went all in on black, all in on red, that this was going to be a good year. because we had like $5,000 in the account going into 2024. And then my wife crashed her car. January 8th, she was coming back from Houston and was in.
I was a physical therapist. I would work in Houston and see my clients back there every Monday. And so I was on my way home from having worked on a Monday, and apparently it was crazy rain, and I had a terrible car accident that they had to life flight me out of.
And I mean, that's a whole podcast in its own, that story. But when we got to the hospital, they already had the chaplain there to prepare us for her passing. That's how serious it was. And here she sits as an absolute miracle. But sitting in that, I'd worked so hard to save this ranch. I'd done everything I could. I hustled and, we'd sell watermelons on the side of the road. I mean, everything to save this place. And then sitting in that hospital room, once she was stable and stuff like that, I just said, Lord, it's okay. We were happy in apartments before. We'll be happy again. Like it doesn't matter. And I could finally let it go. And I did. And I called our one of our staff who helps with the social media. I said, stop advertising for the ranch, the stays, the bookings. That the only thing I want you to post is just asking people for prayer for my wife.
Mm.
And you know that while we were in the hospital without any advertising, the ranch grew 1,300%. I mean,
Wow.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And we had a big social media person who was coming out, and she wrote and said, like, you're committing social media suicide by doing what you're doing, by being so blatant about your faith and prayer and shit. Like, you're destroying your brand of Milk and Honey Ranch. Like, and we're like, what do I care about the brand of Milk and Honey Ranch? I care about these people that are praying for my wife, and that's where we're focusing. And yet that was the very thing that launched this ranch into another stratosphere.
Mm.
And so now we are stewards of God's ranch. And the stress, the pressure, all the things I did to try to save this place. And we are sitting inside of a miracle. Because like I said, we had 5,000 before the crash. And here we got to complete this thing. And it's been a booking here, a booking there, somebody renting the jet ski, somebody having dinner, all of these things. And God has taken that and just multiplied it. And so now all I can do is give hope and testimony to others in situations. Say, like, you literally have your face in the dirt. I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And God was gracious.
That's amazing. So many little moments of your back's against the wall, your face is in the dirt, fear. I mean, these big, heavy, weighty emotions, ones that people get paralyzed by.
Yeah.
We know that feeling. How do you continually, when you lose the stock, a big win, you lose the stock. The ranch is doing great. There's an accident. So many of these little moments. People go through those in their own ways every day, of course. How do you overcome the fear that paralyzes you? Yeah, how do you do that?
Having come through the stock crash, I was so much better prepared for my wife's crash because I'd seen God's faithfulness. So when she crashed, I didn't fall down on the ground and fall apart like I did with the stock crash because I knew that God was going to be faithful. And driving down to the hospital, the kids were obviously crying. And I turned to them and I said, I promise you this. There is no scenario in which we won't see the goodness of God. That's not saying she was going to live. That's not saying any of those things. But I said, I can promise you that we are going to see the goodness of God. And that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
We've been hit by a tornado since then. We got hit by this last hurricane. So I mean, we continue to have events, but so does everybody else. But the difference is I look to see the goodness of God.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what's happening, this is not the end of the story. That's such an important thing to know when things fall apart. Like, That's what's happening in this moment. But this is not the end of the story. We will see the goodness of God. And even with my wife's crash, you know that we made more friends through that 1 month than what we've made in over 20 years in the US. I mean, there's still so many people who write to say that they're inspired by the story and how it's given them hope and things like that. And that's priceless. I mean, obviously, I want my wife to have to go through what she went through. I couldn't think of a better outcome than that. How about for you?
I mean, I think a lot of it does have to do with kind of knowing the personhood of Jesus. And obviously, I've had a slightly different encounter and story, as he really said. I mean, he's always managed the ranch and the business and all those kinds of things. But for me personally, it's really just like knowing that God is trustworthy. You know, regardless of what happens, like he is trustworthy and he is so faithful that even in the craziest, stories or whatever it is, like he still gets down like with us in whatever state we're in, no matter how big or small it is, like he cares even about that. And so I think that's always been my stance, is just like, if the Lord cares about the small things that I may be worrying about, which is clearly very different to the things he may worry about. But yet the Lord cares about it all, and I think he is so trustworthy. He really is a good father. If we will rest in that, I think there's so much more peace in resting in that than trying to figure out life.
It's a game changer when you can fully believe that good is going to come out of whatever I'm facing because of God.
Mm-hmm.
Because what makes us most fearful is that I'm going to be disadvantaged. I'm going to be dismembered. I'm going to have a life I hate. I'm going to struggle. Those are the things that fear. I'm not going to meet somebody. I'm never going to be the same again. I'm never going to recover. Whatever those things are.
The thing that I'm noticing that sounds like that was a pattern in your life is faithfulness in the few and the small, and that created those habits for the first storm, and then you get back on track, and then you've got the habits in place to know how to handle these things. So when you've got the habits in place already, you know how to handle the big stuff. And so it sounds like that was a theme, and it started from a young age. It sounds like, being both from South Africa, you knew each other when you were even younger, before you begin to date. And then I understand you were a pastor for a period of time.
Yes.
And so you really, as they say, you put your money where your mouth is, right? You're really walking through the seasons of doubt and grief and fear. And I'm curious what ranching and owning a ranch has taught you about these big ideas, these big things. It's scary to buy a piece of property. It sounds like you guys are comfortable being in situations where you aren't used to being, right? Moving from South Africa to the US, IT job to a ranch. These are vastly different things. So what has ranching taught you about being a steward of just in your own life?
Yeah. First of all, I give credit to my mom, a single mom raising 2 boys who really believed and tried for the impossible. And I really think that affected my brother and I, in that way. But ranching is tough. But it's a different kind of difficulty that doesn't eat your soul, that fills your soul. I mean, we've shed many tears on this ranch, losing animals and things like that. Like, we really love these little pigs and goat. We had a little goat named Rocky, who he would sleep in the bed with the kids. I mean, when he died, I was surprised how much I cried, kind of thing. But my hope was that it would make us better human beings in that we're not so selfish, not so self-centered, and appreciate things more. And you truly do. When you've put effort into growing a watermelon versus just picking it up from the store, like it's a very different feel. You know, you look at it, you stroke it, you're like, nice to meet you. It's just the taste. It might all be psychological, but there's something so different knowing the amount of effort that went into it. I remember this with my son. We were harvesting our first set of chickens. You know, and he's a young boy, tough boy, and it's like, we're gonna kill these chickens and whatever. Anyway, we killed the first one, and he was broken. Like, why are we doing this? I said, yes. When you walked into Wingstop, you never considered when you ordered 10 wings, that's 5 chickens, that had to go. So I love that aspect of it. I think that plus the Airbnb, I think that no matter our level of wealth, we should always find ways to serve others, and not just nice people that push our buttons and stretch us, because there's nothing more Christian than serving others. And I remember I was serving dinner to some guests one night, and they said to me, they're like, are you the owner? I said, yes. They're like, why are you serving us dinner? I said, because it's a privilege. It's a joy, and I teach that to my kids. I said, you're never too rich to serve others, to help others, to be in that service place. How about you?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's what I really enjoyed being on a ranch and a farm kind of setup is, and maybe it's just my way of thinking about it, but I feel like we're a little bit closer to perhaps how the Lord originally designed it when he created humans. And not that makes us better people or anything like that, but I get a little bit of joy out of the fact that we're a little bit more in line with perhaps the Garden of Eden or something like that. And even just, eating your own food. I just think like in today's world, it's crazy what's out there in terms of what they're putting in our food and the preservatives and all those things. And the health industry is crazy. I mean, we've just had some experience with that in terms of medicine and all those sorts of things. And it's crazy. So I've always been a little bit more along the lines of like, the more we can kind of do ourselves, I just think it's better for life. It's better for health. And
so one of the things that we try to do, we do a little farm tour, right? And as city folks like us would come, we try to let the bug bite there. To say, even if you just start growing a little something in your house, be a producer where you can, not just a consumer. If we all do something like that, it's amazing the difference that we can make. And the joy that comes from it. We hatched our first chicken in Houston. In a subdivision, we weren't allowed chickens, but we hatched our first chicken on the
kitchen count.
The kitchen count. And
in that little, like, what is that called? That incubator.
Incubator. We got the eggs from eBay, and one of them wasn't going to make it. And everything we read online says you don't take the shell off because if it's not strong enough to break out, it's not going to survive. And we couldn't. This guy was struggling and he wasn't going to make. So we took the shell off, and he looked like a bloody mess. We had cotton swabs, and we're trying to save this guy's life. I was up all night praying for this little chicken, to make it, and he made it. He's still living here on the lodge, this guy. So it's just things like that I truly believe it transforms us to be better people in society.
I noticed that you guys do so many cool events. You have come meet the cow, you have come and do the tea, you've got the cafe coming. So many neat events that provide people an opportunity to come and experience it and build community and build confidence. The theme that I saw in many of the events is that they were around women. So it's an invitation for the women. This is a women's retreat. This is a woman's night. All of these that's kind of was a theme I saw. I'm curious, Daniela, to hear why you think it's so important to get women out on land.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I have a very elaborate reason for that. I just think that together with Roundtop and a few other things, I think oftentimes it seems to be the women that kind of spearhead, whether it's bringing their families out or something like that. Perhaps it's also that women are more on social media than men are. I mean, men have to worry about a job and all those kinds of things. So,
Women do work as well.
no,
It's just you. Not everybody has your life.
I used to work. I have not worked since the accident.
It's enough work putting up with him full time.
Yeah,
There you go.
thank you.
I got your back.
So I don't know if that has a role to play in it, but yeah, I think we do have a little bit more of a woman. I'm blanking on the word.
Yeah.
That's just been our clientele,
Yeah.
and we do a lot of family retreats, and the number one person in the family that organizes the retreat is the grandmother. So, and that's been across all the retreats we've had. The grandmother has been like the central glue that's bringing everybody together for this.
Well, I thought that was just a neat thing that I noticed, and I think that it's important to talk about it and to recognize it, because I don't think that people realize everybody. We often, when we think about and dream about being on the ranch, I think it's often the man that has the grand vision of being the cowboy, wrangling the cows and doing these things, which is awesome. But I just thought that was a cool thing that you had so many things dedicated to
Yes.
to the women, and I figured there was a reason for that.
Yeah.
What about the community aspect of things? There's such a big difference between living in a city, living in a small community. At the end of the day, cities are just big communities, but
Yes.
there's a different feeling, a different spirit about living in a small town, in a small community. And so I'm curious y'all's experience from transitioning into the city, from the city into a small community, and how you've seen, things kind of band together in different ways.
Yeah. The community, I would say everybody's been kind. It wasn't like the Hallmark movies where you go to the small town and everybody's coming out and bringing you pies and welcoming you. It wasn't like that at all. There were a few key people that were very kind and welcoming and helpful. But it wasn't until my wife's accident that I think they let us in. And they really opened up their arms and were so kind. And now it's been amazing. The church was extremely helpful. The people in the church were very welcoming. So having a local church was a big step forward. But
I think we can appreciate, even if we weren't. I think when somebody comes into a small town like this, like you transition, it's not like they with their arms wide open, but
they're cautious of it. Even with
they're
the kids,
cautious.
they were like side-eyeing them for a long time.
Yeah, because a lot of people.
I think it's a common experience, by the way.
Yeah, at least in this town, I think a lot of people have lived here like for a few generations, so they've grown up and lived here as forever. And so they all kind of know each other. And that's something that I can appreciate, even if we aren't fully a part of it, is just how they do band together as a community in whatever way. I think is really sweet how they do that. So in terms of the community, but still, even if they didn't open us, welcome us with open arms right in the very beginning, it still is a different feel here compared to the city. You have your community in the city, but you kind of have your community, and whether it's school and church and, work things that bind you together, you find your people, and that's kind of it. It's not like all the neighbors are coming out and are so friendly. and you're living on top of each other. Like now when I drive into the city, I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Like you don't have your neighbor like right next to you. I mean, it should be great. It says to love your neighbor as yourself. We should all be loving each other. But, practically it's not necessarily like that.
I love learning to see the same people in different places. I love that part where in a city you can see someone and never see them again. Yeah, you'll see them at the rodeo, the local rodeo. You'll see them at the grocery store. You'll see them, I love that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And people will stop, Daniela in the HEB and like, oh, we are praying for you. Stuff like that. It just, that's been very kind.
Yeah.
We had a Christmas experience where we wanted to open up the doors for the community and just lift up the name of Jesus. We had a live nativity scene. We're going to serve hot chocolate, and 1,000 people showed up.
Wow.
It was crazy. Some people sat in their cars for 30 minutes. They were not happy, but just trying to get in the market. We weren't expecting a response like that. So there's those moments where it's like, we know we're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
When you moved out here, everybody was a little reluctant. The kids were a little reluctant. I think that parents parents do things for their kids, right? And they have an idea of, we're going to move to the country. My kids are going to get this new experience.
Yeah.
And then often, it's met with some reluctancy. But I'm curious to what you guys saw, the changes you saw in your kids after moving here. Because I think a lot of people view that as something that they want to do. They want their kids to have this experience of living in the country. Did you see changes in your children?
Yes. My daughter didn't talk to me for 3 months, which was awful. As a father, she told me I've ruined her life. She was crying every day. As a father, it broke my heart. And then my wife, wasn't like, my babes, this is the best life ever. So you got to have courage if you're going to do it. Somebody wrote to me on Facebook and said, how did I do this and what was my process? And they're trying to navigate this with their kids. And they didn't like my answer because I said, like, you tell your kids what to do, they'll be okay. If I listened to the kids, like we wouldn't have done 90% of the stuff that we do. And then afterwards, they're so great. So I'll give you this story. So
kids are a lot more hardy than I think we even give them credit for whatever it is.
And you've got to parent.
They transition.
This generation, kids are like sitting at the table of decision, like a board of directors on everything that parents are doing. I don't think it's good. But my daughter, when I was trying to win her over, I said, what can I do for you that we could do here that you couldn't do in Houston? So she said, how about a tree house that she can paint it? So I built her this tree house. Lovely, lovely thing down there. And end of last year, she said to me, she doesn't want it anymore. And I was like, and she said, Dad, when we first came, I was really angry. I wanted to be far away. Now I'm really happy. And I love my room. So I don't need it anymore. And we have definitely seen a change in selfishness. We've seen an appreciation in them, gratefulness. That is so key. When we eat, I feel like it's a whole different experience. The kids can tell you all about the veggies. They can tell you about what it takes. They've put up fences. They've done all of these things. I feel like they're so much more invested in something than if we had stayed in a city, because there was nothing to invest in. It's just the kids' sports, and you're not building stuff like this. Yeah. So it gave us opportunity to build as a family, and then for them to see the results. I think it will change their future forever in how they look at the world.
I think they've become generally a little more open-minded because they are not only on the farm, but just in general, people out there, they exposed to, I think, so much more, so many more people, things like that than they were in the city, because you do generally just stick to that school, that socioeconomic group, all those kinds of things. So if that's all the kids grow up with, that's all that they know. Whereas here, they are, exposed to everything. And a big thing for me when Geordie was really upset about that is really try to have her kind of, seek the Lord on her own behalf, not on our behalf, but on your own behalf, to really trust that the Lord has got your best interests at heart and that He is going to turn everything for good, not just for mom and dad, but He's going to turn everything for good for you because you are valuable to Him.
Yes.
And that was something that I really challenged her at, was like, He's got your life and your plan in mind and at heart, and she's gotten to witness that, which I think is a huge lesson.
I've only cried twice on this ranch. One was when Rocky the goat died. And before that, my wife went on a women's retreat, and she called me from the women's retreat saying, whatever they were talking about, she's like, thank you for leading us so courageously and taking us on this adventure. That was the first time my wife was like, I realize what you've done and how good this is. So those 2 times, that was very special.
That's huge. After you guys moved here, you had a bunch of projects done, a lot of things happening at once.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people have the vision and have a dream
Yes.
of doing what you're doing. We hear it every day. We help people buy and sell land and ranch property. And so we hear it every day. And the constant thing is, man, I want to buy a place. I want to make it profitable. I want to have a business there. I want to do all these things, and they have their grand vision. Everybody's a little different, but they have a dream of doing this. I think it's part of the American dream to buy land, live there, and flourish.
Sure.
So I think a lot of people get stuck between the idea and the vision. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, especially coming from an IT background where things are so, ethereal, you can't touch it, you can see it, but it's all up in your head, and then you put it into, the cloud, for lack of a better term, right?
Yeah.
And the ranch there's nothing ethereal about it. It's there. You've got to put the shovel into the dirt and move the dirt.
Yeah.
And, same with buying the property. You have to get boots on the ground and go bushwhacking through the ranch to see if it's the right place. So what advice could you give to somebody that is sitting there dreaming, looking online, of dreaming of the ranch that they want?
Yeah.
Should they do it?
So this is actually something I'm very passionate about through all of this, because I do meet a lot of people, and I'm sad to say that a lot of them will never realize their dream, not because they're not capable of, but because they're not willing to pay the price. That's really what this comes down to. You can have your cake and eat it. It's just not going to be on the same day, right? There may be a long way in between, those two moments. I'm very much for the saying of, you got to burn the ships. That story where they were trying to take land.
Tell the story.
So I can't remember who the commander was, but they were trying to take land, and they kept getting beaten back, and then they would retreat to the ships. And on the one day they were going to go to the battle, the commander burnt the ships. And that's the day they won the battle, because there was nowhere to retreat to. So we sold our house, and obviously losing all that money was we had no retreat. I had nowhere to go. I had to find a way to make it work. And when you fully commit to something, whatever it is, even if it's a variation, just like this ranch, it's not the version that we started with. I think it's a better version. So number one, I really support the idea of getting onto land. And I'm actually working with a group of individuals that we can do that for people, that we can create a way, even if it's just an acre, but letting them have that experience of planting, having animals and all that. I'm a big supporter of that. But number two, it's not for the soft. And I worry about some people in this generation that have been handed stuff too easily. And the moment life punches them in the stomach, they're like, I'm out. You can't retreat if you're going to succeed at this. God just as God is faithful, he rewards faithfulness. And if you will stick to it and you will hold to it and you will, I mean, I slept in my car. We paid whatever price we needed to pay to have this life. You know, people are like, oh, you're so lucky. Luck had nothing to do with this, right? God's grace, yes. And a lot of hard work. But it's good hard work. I've got the best tan I've ever had in my life.
Just that's there. Just that's there.
That's right. What is some advice that you would say to somebody who wants the lifestyle that you have here?
I mean, I don't know if it's really that relevant, but for me, like, I feel like we do live in a society where the men are, I mean, yes, I anchor you, but I also let you lead us as much as possible. And I think, you know, we do live in a society where there's not a lot of wives who are letting their husbands lead and pursue their dreams and stuff like that. And maybe it's fear. I'm not sure, you know, what it is that's behind that. But I think as a woman, to not fear the outcome and to just trust your husband at the same breath, you're trusting the Lord. But, you know, my trusting the Lord is different to him trusting the Lord because I'm trusting through him in a sense.
And I must say, my wife has never been that person that says, what are we going to do now when we lost the money in the stock? She's like, you know, she's never made me feel bad or like you're an idiot or, you know, any of those things, which she has been always blowing wind under my wings while holding me back at the same time.
That's important. That's a good answer. That's a very good answer.
So that's what I feel strongly about. I think even in the Christian capacity, I think in churches today, there's very few women who are just letting their husbands lead them in the entirety, in different aspects, you know, but that is...
Right. You do that
That's
very well.
one. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela.
Thank you.
Garden of Eden. Perfection. And what's the first thing God does after creating? He tells Adam to get to work. I said, if you think heaven is just us lying around on beach chairs and stuff like that, we're going to work because it's a blessing to work. And when you can see that fruit of, that's what's so beautiful about farm work. I ate my first mango the other day. 3 years ago, we planted that when we first came here. I mean, that thing was so special. And it does something to the heart, for sure.
Is it harder than you thought it would be?
Much harder. Much harder. You know, you go to sleep and everything's fine and you wake up and it's like fences are down, water pipes are broken. You're like, what the heck happened in the night? Much harder, but even more rewarding than what I thought it would. I thought it would be rewarding. It's exceeded that. The other thing is it's a beautiful thing to share. You know, you're able to, you know, to bring people into the equation with you, to be part of it. So I know one of your questions was about future, and we've got 10 acres down at the bottom there that I want to build 10 homes for like a long-term lease, like a year or whatever, for that reason of people who may not have the courage to make the big jump yet, but you can at least get them in so that you can start to change their heart about what life can be. Instead of just that consumer mentality, they can see the reward of investing and then, you know, getting something back from agriculture.
When you think about the next decade, beyond that project, which sounds awesome, what's your vision for your family? What's your vision for the ranch?
So the ranch has really become a ministry. People who come here, I mean, we what I always tell the staff is we're in the people business and we happen to do short-term rentals and all of that stuff. That's just the method in which we meet them. But we really around loving people, building them up. I mean, we just took on somebody to come here. My cousins reached out to me from Australia. They said there's a person in desperate need, suicidal, homeless, whatever. All the things that as society would be like, yeah, no, thank you. Living in Houston, I couldn't have done much. Here, yesterday I went and bought a camper, set up the camper, and placed her in there. So I say that to say that's what this whole ranch represents. And I think that's the direction that we're heading. So in the next 10 years, I think we'll train up a lot of people in how to do this for themselves. So we'll become a resource of learning and growing. And you know, we're that story of like, you can do it from the city with no knowledge, all of that. And here's how it goes about. So I think the retreats will continue to pour into people to build them up. I'd love to see marriages, you know, growing from that, fathers and sons, just every kind of opportunity to build relationships. I think the cafe is going to do really well. You know, right now we support over 15 families, which, I mean, this is just a small ranch. I'm so proud of that. You know, even though, you know, Facebook employs 70,000 individuals, like I'm really proud of this little ranch. And if we can each learn to do that, I mean, we really can change people's lives tremendously.
That's good. I think that's a good place to land the plane.
Okay.
I think that this is just so wonderful what you guys have done here. Nothing short of a miracle, as I mentioned at the beginning.
Gosh, for
this
sure.
whole thing is just amazing. And the thing that I go back to is so many people have the dream of doing what you're doing and fail to take the first step.
Yes.
And trust. And that's the hardest step.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. It's never easy, but you guys have shown that through these trials that it all works out in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for your efforts and thank you for what you guys are doing here. I think it's very inspiring and I think you're doing very good work.
Thank you.
We look forward to coming and checking it out as it grows and supporting you guys.
You'll have to come eat at the cafe when it's...
I will be first in line.
When it's open.
I'll do seconds, so get more.
So thank you. Thank you for your
Thank you,
kind
man.
words and coming to hear the story.
Yeah, man. Thank you.